There is a powerful, timely message in today's gospel reading. It occurs right at the very end of the gospel itself. And it is an insight that Simon Peter offers to Jesus. Maybe you might remember what I just said and read a few moments ago. But in order to truly understand this timely message that Simon Peter says to Jesus, we have to build up some context. Let's take a look at this graphic. People come, people go, people join, people quit, people sign up, people sign off, people walk in, people walk out. Now that is the history of something. Does anyone recognize the history that that refers to? I'll give you a little hint. It is the history of the longest running institution in the world, lasting longer than the great dynasties of China, longer than a Khan dynasty of China. It is the longest lasting institution in the world that doesn't have a military. Does anyone now recognize what history that describes? It is something that is precious to me and precious to you because you were here this morning. What is the history that that describes? The church. To be more specific, that's the history of the Roman Catholic Church. Now, there have been volumes written about the Roman Catholic Church. And if all those volumes were placed inside of this church, it would take 20 churches this size to hold all the volumes of the history of the Catholic Church. But I love history. And in my heart, this summarizes the history of the Catholic Church. Because from the very beginning of the church itself, people have come and they've gone, they joined, they quit. They signed up, they walked out. That's the history of the church. Now what we want to do is take a look at verse 65 of the 6th chapter of John. Let's take a look. It says in verse 65, many of his, now that's third person singular, so that's a reference to Jesus. Many of his disciples, these are new converts to Christianity. Many of his disciples returned to the former way of life and no longer accompanied Jesus. Now what does that mean? You see, by the time we get to the 6th chapter of John's Gospel, Jesus has already handpicked his original 12 apostles. And he sends these men out into the mission territory to see if they can acquire converts to Christianity. Now these original 12, they did something I think I would have done. They turned to their family and friends first. But they ran across small success. Why? Because every one of these original 12 apostles, disciples, they were all Jewish. Their family and friends were Jewish. And so they turned to their family and friends who were all Jewish. They had a religion called Judaism. So they weren't open to converting to something else. They already had a religion that they loved. So they didn't find great success among their family and friends to convert to Christianity. So they thought to themselves, well, let's turn to people who don't have any religion. So they switched over to the Gentiles. For the most part, a Gentile is a non-Jew. The Gentiles back in biblical times are also referred to as pagans. They had no religion at all. And when they switched and started to preach to the Gentiles, they found great success. Great conversion to Christianity. They were coming to Christianity in droves. They couldn't get there fast enough. But what happened after they joined? Right here, verse 65. They joined this new religion called Christianity, and right after they joined, look at what it says. The word disciple means follower. Many of Jesus' followers returned to the former way of life and no longer accompanied him. At the very beginning of the church, people joined and then they quit. Now the word many has quantity to it. Many means more than a few. Many means more than some. Many means a lot. So all these people joined Christianity, and shortly after that, they quit. Did you ever want to run away in your life? Did you ever want to quit something? Do you ever want to run, but you don't know where to run to? It has been a difficult couple of weeks. There was one time in my life I, in fact, wanted to run away. Back when my father was in a neurotrauma unit down at Shadyside Hospital, being there for 1 month. He was approaching his end. And my family, we were around him, just holding on to him. My mom holding and rubbing his forehead. I believe I was holding on to his knee. We were just watching the monitors, and things were digressing rapidly this one particular Sunday. And then at one point, the doctor said he had passed, and I'll never forget that. When the doctor said he had passed, I got this feeling in my heart that I wanted to run. I wanted to bolt out of that room and run down a hallway and run out of Shadyside Hospital and then probably down Center Avenue. I wanted to run away. But I thought to myself, yes, I want to run. The problem that's keeping me from running, I don't know where to run to. Sometimes in life when you want to run, you don't know where to run to. Had I known where to run to, I probably would have run. But I thought to myself, if I do run, how far do I go? When do I turn around and come back? I don't know where to go. My heart was empty. I was confused. I was hurt. And I wanted to take off. But as I'm standing there, still holding on to him, despite the fact he had passed, I thought to myself, there's nowhere to run. I need to stay where I'm at, because this is the center of my life. My family's around my father, who just passed. I will stay right here. It has been a difficult couple of weeks. I would think for every Catholic in this diocese, in this state, in this country, and I'm not sure how world news works, but probably in the world as well. And there's a very good chance that some of you, many of you, have said to yourself, when you have heard these news stories or read the stories, you're sickened and you're empty inside and you want to throw up. And you might say to yourself, I would love to leave. Now, what I find amazing is this, and this is what I built up to. We want to take a look at verse 67, 68, 69. Let's take a look. This is powerful. In the middle of all this leaving, as they got all these converts to Christianity, and in verse 65, many went back to the former way of life. They walked away from Christ and the church, went back to having no religion at all. Now, Jesus himself had to be hurt by watching this in his beginning of his church. So he says this is powerful. Hold on to this. Jesus then said to the 12, that's the original 12 apostles, disciples, his handpicked 12. And he said to those guys, you also want to leave? I'm watching all the people you got to join my church. They're all walking away. Many are walking away. You guys going to leave? What are you going to do? And look at Simon Peter's answer. I know why now Jesus Christ made Simon Peter the first pope of the church. That's some powerful, and look at what he said. Simon Peter answered him. Now Jesus asked all 12, but this is the only guy that spoke up. How many people remained silent? But Simon Peter spoke. And Simon Peter answered Jesus, this is powerful. Jesus, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe. We are convinced that you're the Holy One of God. So he stayed. That is powerful. That is absolutely powerful. You know, what is amazing is this. The gospel I just read is being read in every parish in this diocese, this state, this country, and every Catholic church in the world is reading this gospel reading that I just read. The church is divinely inspired. These gospel readings are developed in a 3-year cycle. This gospel only occurs once every 3 years. This reading to be read today was picked many years ago for all Catholic churches. That's what gives us our universality, or the fact that we are one, because we are connected with every Catholic in the world. Here I read it in English. That gospel this morning being read in Poland would be read in Polish. And whatever language, the vernacular, the country in which that is being read, it would be read in that language. But that's the gospel being read around the world. And hopefully everyone holds on to verse 67, 8, and 69. Those are powerful words. as in your disgust, and you should be. As in your anger, and you should be. And in your desire to say, I want to run, because I'm exhausted of these stories. These guys are wearing me out. The church I love so much has just been ripped apart. All I know is, at one time in my life, I wanted to run. I didn't know where to run to. Had I known, I would have. Now, this is the second time in my life I wanted to run. But the same thing happened as it happened the first time. I don't know where to run to. Where do you go? Where do you run? Jesus, and we forget this, is human and divine, but he is human. In the humanity of Christ, that's how we can identify with Jesus Christ. In the humanity of Christ, what does Christ feel like today and 2 weeks ago and a Tuesday 11 days ago? In his humanity, I look at Christ and I see what coming out of his eyes? Massive tears. I entrusted my church to the very human beings I created, and they maligned it. Not all. Some, which is a lot less than many. And some is a lot less than all. But those tears are rolling down his eyes, and I say to myself this morning, Jesus Christ has got to be saying to all of us, and I don't know how you could not have said in the last couple of days, I got to get out. I'm tired of it. I'm embarrassed from it. I want to run away. The trouble is, where do you go? Those words from Simon Peter are powerful. If you're having a conversation with a fellow Catholic, or even a Christian, or just a human being, because that's the only way to have a conversation, but if you're having a conversation with anyone, and they are confused and they're disgusted with the church, tell them, look, go home. This is in their Bible as well, Catholic or Protestant. Go to John 6, 67 to 69. Listen to what Peter says. That is extremely insightful. You guys want to leave? Simon Peter's the only one that spoke up. Everyone else remained silent. That's why he became the first pope of the church. Because he had the courage and, more importantly, the insight to speak words that are powerful. That's what he said. Jesus, to whom shall we go? Maybe that's another way of saying, yes, we'd like to leave, we'd like to run, but I don't know where to go. You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe, we are convinced that you're the Holy One of God. Therefore, he stayed. I stayed in a hospital room because I didn't know where to go. And the difficulty of what we've been through and maybe what we're going to go through. And the desire maybe to walk away. I think Jesus in his humanity is looking at all of us this morning with tears rolling down his eyes. And he's asking us individually, are you going? A whole lot of people have. From the very beginning of the church, this isn't something that just was invented in 2018. But when my disciples got those original converts, a lot of those people bolted early on. Are you going to go? Hopefully you can adopt, and only adopt it if this is the way you feel. But if Jesus says to you in your prayer and your meditation, are you going to leave? Will you have the ability? Are you there today to be able to repeat those words of Simon Peter back to Jesus? And say to Jesus, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We are come to believe and convinced that you are the Holy One of God. Hopefully, today you feel that way, and if not, you will. But if you can repeat those words when Jesus asks you, where are you going to go? Hopefully you can say those words, which will let Jesus know, no. No, despite all this, guess what? There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to run. Because in you I have it all. And therefore, I stay.